If you're trying to figure out how to start saving for retirement, you've probably heard all the basic advice. Save 15%, buy index funds, don't panic when the market drops. And that advice isn't wrong, it's just incomplete. And if it's all you do, you're going to walk into retirement hoping it works out instead of knowing it will. So, what I want to do is walk you through the 6 things I'd actually do if I were starting today, the framework I'd build my whole approach around, not theory, not watered down advice you'd find on another personal finance channel, the real version based on what I see actually work and what I see go wrong. I'm a financial planner and I work with people in this exact space every day. People who are saving, people who wish they saved more, people who saved their whole life, but they still got it wrong in important ways. If I were starting from scratch today, here's exactly what I'd do, and the principles work whether you've got 35 years until retirement or 15. And real quick, if you want someone to actually look at your specific situation and tell you what's possible from where you are, that's exactly what we do at Riverbend. There's a link in the description to book a free discovery call below. All right, let's get into it. Number one, and this is the step almost every retirement video skips, which is wild because everything else depends on it. Before you do anything else, you need to know what you're actually aiming for. Not a vague sense of, I should probably save more, but a number that actually came from your real life. And here's the problem with most retirement advice. It starts with a number like $1 million, $2 million, whatever sounds big enough to actually feel safe. But the number's just made up. Somebody picked it because it was round, and then the whole industry started aiming at it. Try this instead. Picture the life that you want to have in retirement. And you don't have to just be comfortable, be specific. Where do you wake up? What's a Tuesday look like? Are you traveling? Are you hosting your kids? Are you walking the dog and reading a book on the front porch? And then the harder question, what does that life actually cost per year? Maybe that life is $60,000 for you. Maybe it's $120,000. Nobody else gets to answer that for you. Then take that number and multiply it by 25. That's going to be your rough target. $60,000 a year gets you to 1.5 million, $100,000 a year, 2.5, 120 to 3 million. And if you've heard the 4% rule, that's basically what we're doing here. 25 times your spending is the inverse of that. And it's just napkin math. It's not perfect, but it's a target that came from your actual life, not someone else's headline. Let me show you what I mean. Say you landed on 2 million. You're 30, and let's say you got nothing saved. Assuming a 7% average return, you'd need to save about $1,100 a month for the next 35 years to get there. That's specific. That's something you can plan around, and honestly, that's doable for most people. Now let's bump it out. Let's say you're 45 with $100,000 saved, and you want to get to that same 2 million by 65. That's 20 years to grow, but you'd need about $2,500 a month. A bigger number, still workable. Then let's say you're 55. $250,000 saved, same target at 65, now just 10 years, and you're going to need to save about $7,600 a month. That's a much harder number. And if your stomach just dropped a little bit, that might be good because the math is telling you the truth. But here's the part no one is saying. If the number's too big, saving more isn't your only lever. You can earn more. You could work 2 more years. You could spend a little bit less in retirement. You could start to rethink that life you pictured, and you might actually find out that you wanted a smaller, quieter version of it anyways. But you got 3 different ages, 3 completely different conversations. Without running the actual math for your situation, every other piece of advice, it's just going to be noise. Here's why this matters more than people realize. Most people who save for retirement do it without a real target. They put 6% in their 401k because that's what HR set up for them, and they hope it's enough. And then that hope is what lets people coast for 20 years and then wake up at 55 wondering why they're behind. When you put a real number on it, everything changes. You stop guessing. You either hit the number or you make a deliberate decision to change something. And look, you don't need the perfect number. You need a number that came from your actual life. Wrong on purpose beats vague on accident every time. Number 2, and this is the one that most retirement videos won't tell you because it doesn't fit neatly inside of a portfolio chart. Your income is your single biggest retirement tool. It's bigger than picking the right fund, bigger than asset allocation, bigger than basically anything else you can control. Here's the math. Let's say that you're making $75,000 a year and you save 10% of that. That's $7,500 a year going towards retirement. Now you get a $7,500 raise to $82,500. You keep saving that 10%, you're putting away $8,250 a year instead. That extra $750 invested at 7% over 30 years, that compounds to around $76,000. That's one raise, saved, not spent. Now, compare that to investment optimization. Say you've got $50,000 saved and you try to find a way to earn 1% more a year on it, which is actually hard to do consistently, by the way. Then over 30 years, that would net you about $15,000 in extra growth. So a single raise that you actually save beats grinding for an extra percentage point on your portfolio. And then that begins to stack. You get a few of those raises over your career, you save them, and then you're not just optimizing anymore, you're changing the entire trajectory of your retirement. Now, most personal finance will tell you to save more of what you earn. That's still true, but you've also got a lever most people forget about, and it's the earning more in the first place. You can spend years tweaking your portfolio by 0.5% and still miss the fact that a conversation with your boss or a sharper skill set or a new employer is worth more than all of that. Now, here's where it gets practical, because what this looks like depends on where you are. If you're in your 20s or 30s, your career is the asset. Every raise, every promotion, every job change, that's going to bump your salary up, and those are dollars that get invested for the next 30 or 40 years. That's why job changes early on tend to matter more than people realize. Now, staying put and loyal is fine. You just need to know the math and the cost of it. If you're in your 40s or 50s, here's something people miss. You're probably in your peak earning years, and you don't even realize it. The data shows that for most professions, earnings peak between 45 and 60. That's because you're more skilled, you're more experienced, and you're more valuable than you've ever been. And that's leverage you need to use. Whether that means you're asking for what you're worth or taking on a role with more responsibility or moving to another company that pays you better, this is the window where your income can move the most. And here's the part that makes this practical. You don't have to hustle. You don't need to go get a side business. You don't need to grind it out. You just need to recognize that your career is the biggest financial decision you're making, and you got to treat it that way. Most people don't. They negotiate hard for a house, they shop 3 quotes for car insurance, and then they take whatever raise HR offers them, and they never ask a single question. All right, number 3. Once you know your number and you're working on growing your income, the question becomes, where do you actually put the money? Because the order matters, and most people get this wrong. Here's a simple framework, and look, it's not perfect for every single household, but it's a strong starting point. The first thing you want to do is get your 401k match. If your employer matches up to 4% of your salary, put in at least 4%. That's free money. That's an immediate return before your investments do anything. But if you skip the match, you're leaving part of your compensation on the table. So start here. The second piece is build a small emergency fund, then start attacking the high interest debt. That's the credit cards, the personal loans, anything that's above 8%, because that's where it gets dangerous. And you cannot outinvest a 22% credit card. You don't want to ignore the cash reserves completely. You might want to have a small cushion there in case the water heater goes out, a car repair, mechanic bill shows up. You don't want to have to go back to the credit cards. So have a little buffer, pay down the high interest debt, and then you can start working towards that 3 to 6 month emergency fund. But the key is get out of high interest debt and stay out. The third thing is, if you have it, max out your HSA. If you're on a qualifying high deductible health plan, the HSA may be the best account on this list. That's because it has a triple tax advantage. Tax deductible going in, tax-free growth, and then tax-free withdrawals on qualified medical expenses. And then after 65, you can use it for non-medical expenses too. You just pay ordinary income tax, but no penalty. You can treat this like a stealth retirement account, and most people don't do it. Fourth, you want to consider maxing out your Roth IRA if you're eligible. So in 2026, that's $7,500 if you're under 50, and then $8,600 if you're 50 or older. You get tax-free growth, you get tax-free qualified withdrawals in retirement, and it's a completely different bucket of money that you can use down the road. Now, if your income's too high, you might want to consider whether a backdoor Roth strategy could make sense for you. And then fifth, max out your 401k beyond the match. So in 2026, you can contribute $24,500 if you're under 50. If you're 50 or older, you might be able to add another $8,000 catch up. And then if you're age 60 to 63, that could jump to $11,250 additional if your plan allows it. Now that's specifically designed for people in the final stretch before retirement. And then sixth, anything beyond that can go into a taxable brokerage account. It doesn't have the same tax advantages, but there's no contribution limit to that. There's no retirement account income limit, and it's much more flexible. And it can be especially helpful if you want money available before retirement age. So the general order is you want to match, build the emergency cushion, pay down the high interest debt, look at the HSA, Roth IRA, and then max out your 401k, and then the taxable brokerage. Most people get this wrong in one of three ways. They skip the match to pay down the debt, which leaves free money on the table. They build a huge emergency fund while paying 22% on a credit card, which costs them thousands. Or they fund a brokerage account before using the available tax-advantaged accounts, which means they may be paying taxes they didn't need to pay. So get the order right, and the same dollar does more work. This framework works as a starting point whether you're 30 or if you're 55. The difference is how you adjust it based on your tax bracket, your debt, your emergency fund, your income, and then how close you are to retirement. Quick reminder before we keep going, the first three things we covered are the financial mechanics. The next three are about the decisions and habits that actually determine whether the mechanics work for you over time. If you want help building your specific plan, there's a link in the description below to book a free discovery call. All right, number 4, and this is the one principle I'd build everything around if I were just starting today. Don't let your lifestyle outgrow your income. Here's what happens for most people. You get a raise and then your lifestyle starts to expand to match it. You get the new car instead of the old one, the bigger house instead of the same one. You're eating out a little bit more often, and the subscriptions start to pile up. And look, nothing feels extravagant in the moment. It just feels like life is getting a little bit better. But over 10 years, those upgrades can add up to hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars. And every dollar of lifestyle creep is a dollar that's not compounding for your future. Here's the math. Let's say you're earning $75,000 a year and you're saving $7,500. 5 years later, you're earning $95,000. Then your lifestyle expands to match it. So you get the bigger car payment, the bigger house, more spending, and then you might just still be saving $7,500 a year. The raise is gone. It got absorbed into your lifestyle. But if you keep your lifestyle mostly steady, you save, let's say, half the raise, your savings can jump from $7,500 to $17,500 a year. Same job, same effort, but a completely different trajectory. Over 20 years, if we assume a 5% return, that extra $10,000 a year could compound to roughly $330,000. Now, here's where most people lose this battle, and it's not where you'd think. It's usually not the small stuff. It's not the skip your latte advice that people are saying. The two places that lifestyle creep can hit the hardest are the things we buy for status and the experiences we overspend on while we chase meaning. Now, the status piece, that's usually the cars we buy, the houses that we're aiming to get, because the car you drive and the house you live in, those are the two biggest signals of how you want to be seen. They're also two of the biggest line items on your budget. And you upgrade either one of these and you may have just committed yourself to a higher cost of living for 5 to 10 years or maybe even more. And look, it's not that you can't drive a nice car or live in a nice house. It's that sometimes we tell ourselves we're just buying transportation or shelter when part of what we're really buying is the status, the comfort, or the identity. And the experience piece is sneakier. The trips, the restaurants, concerts, it's the constant pull to do more. And look, the experiences can be wonderful. We love them. But the meaning usually comes less from the price tag, and it's more about who you're with, how present you are, and whether the experience actually fits the life you want to live. Spend on the experiences. Just don't confuse the cost with the meaning. Now, this isn't about being miserable or never enjoying anything. It's about being intentional. When you get a raise, decide ahead of time. What percentage is going to improve my life? And then what percentage is going to get invested? Take some of that money, go take a trip, go enjoy it, but also make sure you're setting aside and not just absorbing all this into your lifestyle. The version of you 30 years from now is going to be very glad you did. All right, number 5, and this is the tool almost no retirement video will quantify for you. You need to know what every additional working year is actually worth. Because the difference between retiring at 62 and retiring at 67, it's not just 5 years of work. It's a fundamentally different retirement. Here's why. Every additional year of work does 4 things at once. It adds another year of contributions, it adds another year of investment growth, it reduces the number of years your savings has to last, and it can increase your Social Security benefit for the rest of your life. Let's break this down. Say you're 60 and you've got $500,000 saved and you're putting away $2,000 a month. Now, under one plan, you retire at 62. Your portfolio could be worth about $625,000 when you walk away. Your savings, they've got to last from 62 to 90. That's 28 years. Now, if we flip that, same starting point, but you keep working until 67, you've added 5 more years of contributions. You've added 5 more years of compounding. Now your portfolio is worth just over $1 million, and your savings only have to last about 23 years instead of 28. That's nearly a $400,000 swing in the portfolio from just 5 years of work. And then that's before you account for the fact that under the early retirement plan, you'd been withdrawing from this portfolio and drawing down on it for those same 5 years, which makes the real world gap even bigger. And that's all before Social Security. Now, if you take Social Security at 62, you're getting about 70% of your full benefit for the rest of your life. If you wait until 67, your full retirement age, you're getting about 100%. And then if you wait all the way to 70, that's about 124%. That's not a small number over 20 years. Here's the part most people miss. Social Security isn't just calculated on when you claim. It's calculated on the highest 35 years of earnings. Now, while you only need 40 credits, typically about 10 years of work to qualify for the benefits, 35 years are needed to maximize your personal benefit amount. If you've worked fewer than 35 years, every missing year is a 0 in the formula. So working longer doesn't just delay the claim, it can replace your lowest earning early years with your peak earning late years, and then that will raise your benefit for life. Now, why does this matter at any age? If you're young, knowing this lets you plan around it. You can decide what a realistic retirement looks like for you instead of defaulting to whatever number's in your head. But then if you're closer to retirement, this option might still be available, and it's worth knowing what pulling that lever does to your math. Working longer isn't punishment, it's a tool. And depending on where you are, it might be one of the most powerful tools in your retirement plan. All right, number 6, this is the one that makes everything else actually work. You have got to automate it. The people who win at saving aren't more disciplined than you. They've just built a system that doesn't require the discipline in the first place. Now, I'll say that again in a different way. The people you think are killing it with their retirement are not necessarily working harder than you. They just set something up once, automated it, and then they let it run. Doing well saving money consistently has nothing to do with how smart you are. It has almost everything to do with how you behave. You see, the market doesn't care about your IQ, and your portfolio doesn't care about how much you know about investing. The only thing that actually matters mathematically is whether you can stay in the game long enough for compounding to do the work. And then the people who stay in that game are not the ones with the most discipline. They're the ones who built systems that didn't require it every single month. Here's why that distinction matters. If you're choosing every month whether to contribute, you're going to skip months. Not because you're lazy, but because life is unexpected. The roof is going to leak, the car is going to break down, and then Christmas is going to show up and you're going to want to go spoil your family. There's always a reason to push savings to the next month. And then, guess what? The next month never comes. But if the contribution leaves your paycheck before you ever see the money, you don't even get a vote in that. The decision was made by a past version of you who was thinking clearly. And then that past version of you is now making you rich while you're focused on whatever is in front of you and whatever you want to go do today. That's the move. Take yourself out of the equation completely. And most personal finance advice is built around the idea that more information is going to make you better with money. It says read more books or watch more videos or optimize harder. The premise is that you're broke or you're behind because you don't know enough. But that's not the actual problem. You're a human with a brain that is designed to survive, to spend the dollar that is in front of you. It's not designed to think about making 401k contributions. You have to design around this. Set up the contributions to pool automatically. Set up the auto escalation that bumps your rate by 1% every year. Decide now what the percentage of every future raise is going to be, what's going to go to savings before you ever see it. Then go out and live your life. Here's the bigger truth no one talks about. The goal of saving isn't to hit a number. It's to buy yourself flexibility and options for the future. The system you build now gives you those things later. Not a spreadsheet, not a perfect fund, the system. The version of you 30 years from now isn't going to thank you for being more disciplined. They're going to thank you for being smart enough to build something you didn't have to think about. This is the difference between people who hope retirement works and people who know it will. The first group relies on themselves. The second group builds something that doesn't. Those are the 6 things I'd do if I were starting on retirement savings today. But if you want to see what this looks like in practice, like what $1 million in retirement savings can actually generate in monthly income, when you factor in things like Social Security, taxes, and a withdrawal strategy, I made a video that walks through that right here. I go through 2 real scenarios, a married couple and a single person. We show the gap between having a plan and not having one. I'll see you there.